Welcome to Watercolor Studio 42, and today I'm going to try to emphasize focal point, or a lot of folks call it the center of interest. Now, they always say in all the art books and everywhere else, they say you should only have one particular focal point in your picture. Now, a lot of times what happens is that you probably have seen it where a picture tends to look very busy, and that's because the artist gave every corner and every area of the picture frame area the same amount of attention. So everything, you don't know where to stop, right? You've got all this different area to bounce around in, but there should be supposedly one particular focal point. Now, I'm just going to keep this drawing a little bit simple today, and what I normally do is I sketch with a pencil, just a regular pencil, a 2B pencil, and so I sketch it out somewhat light, and then what I do is go over it sometimes with an outline with a marker. And that's what I'm going to try to do today. I've already kind of made a very light sketch, and what I'm emphasizing today is leading what takes us to that particular one focal point or center of interest, okay? So let's see if I can work that out. Now, I usually know where the center is. I put some little markings in, and roughly, I estimate it now. I used to measure it all the time, you know, to get the exact center and so forth. Now I just look at the paper and kind of estimate where center is from the vertical and the horizontal area. So we'd be somewhere out in here. So what I usually try to do is get things a little bit off-center and not have everything kind of too central. And so this is going to have the focal point today, the point of interest, whatever you want to call it. It's going to be a building. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. It could be a barn, a shed, or whatever, maybe a covered bridge or whatever. But the object is a building. So now you'll have to excuse me a little bit because I'm going to be working faster than normal, you know, for the sketch. And I've indicated very lightly, I can only see it myself. Probably it doesn't show up. But I'm just going to go over my pencil lines that I did first. And then I'll use a permanent marker, emphasis on permanent marker. You don't want to use any other type of marker that would be affected by the paint that you put on the paper or whatever other moisture that you add to your paper. You want to use a permanent marker so that doesn't smudge or blur. Okay, so my focal point here is a good location might be a little bit to the right, a little bit to the right of center, and also a little bit above center. So let's go this area in here. So I'm just going to draw, first of all, I'm going to put the markings in for the roof. Okay. I hope that shows up enough. I probably could have used maybe a heavier marker. Let's use a little heavier marker. This one had a sort of a fine tip to it. So now I've got the roof. Now I'm just going to put some lines down like this, kind of this way. Now this particular building might come out a little bit crooked today, but that's all right. We'll see what we can do the best we can. Sometimes I do a picture, and I purposely don't worry about so much getting the perspective right, but just getting in the detail of a building. Now that much amount there is okay. You could put a little windmill or whatever on top of the roof, or whatever it might have up there, and we'll see. Maybe the ground can go across this way, and then we'll have the back go out that way towards the edge of the paper. Let's see if we can get that right. Now, you can put a door, you have a door in here, number 7, and then you can put some windows in. I just do a backwards 7 sometimes to make the window. You can have a little window up in there if you want. And this could be like a weather vane or whatever you put on the top. Now that's the building, that's the focal point. So now what I want to do is have attention brought to that particular building shape. Now we could put a road in here, and we could have the road come around the bend. We could bring that right around, curve it around here, and it kind of goes to sort of a vanishing point, but it comes out, gets wider, and it comes out like this. Okay, if you want to put a mailbox in there, that's a plus. And then we could have back here. This could be a lower hilly area, and then I'm going to put something a little bit further up into here. Let's have this come down this way. And everything's going towards the focal point. Notice the road goes to the focal point, the skyline and so forth, the ground line. Everything's moving. You can even have the mailbox kind of pointing to the or the sign pointing up that way too. Now, another thing, if you want some trees, you could put in some fir trees. We'll just put them coming down the hill here. Just put some lines. You don't have to put them evenly spaced because they're not trees that would be planted. The only thing that might have even space between it would be like if you're doing telegraph poles, things like that. And sometimes they're not exactly spaced evenly. Let's put some little branches here. Kind of suggests maybe some fir trees. I'm just kind of roughing this in. Don't want to spend. Now, normally I spend a lot of time on the drawing, but today I'm not so fussy about that. What I'm trying to emphasize today is more of what leads your eye to the focal point. Now, the trees can come down. They can sort of go towards the building, and also in the sky, you can have some cloud formations, and even the clouds can be sort of sweeping in through here. See, they're taking you down to the focal point. So we got the road, we got the tree line. We can have something coming in, maybe something. Oh, how about some posts? Maybe there might be some double-railed posts, and even they're going to take you up to the. They'll take you towards that building. So now, sometimes, a lot of times, when you're doing a focal point, it's sort of subtle how you put it in. You can have the beach line run up to the lighthouse type of thing, like I'm doing with this today, whatnot. So we got the clouds coming in. They're kind of leaning in towards the building. We've got the tree line. These are kind of chubby, kind of rough-looking fir trees, but we'll paint them in a little bit more. And then we've got the idea of the hill coming down towards the building, and we got the road that kind of goes up around the bend, around the corner of the building. Now, a lot of times when I do this type of picture, I'm doing it so that I can fit it all into the time frame that we have. So I might spend a lot more time putting in detail, like some grass growing, or some bushes and trees and all that along the way. In the field, whatever. And you could put little figures in there if you want, or maybe have cows in the pasture or whatever it might be, and then go from there. But today, this is just to emphasize how to lead the person towards the focal point, in this case being the house. Okay? Now, I normally, I always do the top. If I could get this cap back on here. Oops, wrong cap, that's why it doesn't fit. There you go. Now, the thing is that that's one thing, you have to keep your markers, the cap on, otherwise they dry out very fast. Now, the next thing I might consider doing is putting in the sky. If I'm doing an outdoor picture, I always work from the top, the sky, putting that background in, and then the lower area, and then I usually finish it off with whatever the focal point is. Like, you know, if it's a flower, I'll spend time doing it, finishing up with the flowers, because that's the focal point, really what the subject's about. Today, the subject's about taking us to a particular location. And like I said, it can be anything. It could be even a bridge or something. But that whatever that is, you want to take the person towards that. Now, let's see what we got here. I'm going to take a little bit of my blue. And usually if I'm doing the sky, I wet this area up in here, just with water. Just put some clear water on there. And wiggle it around. Go right to the tape. Go right to the edge here on the tape. And you can overlap onto the tape if you want. So this is going to be some sky back here. And if I want leave some clouds in there, I just leave the white of the paper in there for now. Okay? So let's take a little bit of this blue. And we're just going to be dabbing some of that in there. Now, in the sky can have different shades of blue. Depending on the what you want to do with it. But I just drop some color. Usually, the upper part up here to the top, I use that sometimes make that a little bit darker. Or one side of the picture area, I should say, I make that a little bit darker. You can, just to make it look interesting. And again, the clouds are taking us down to our focal point. Okay, here we go. Go across here. All right. Now, you don't have to be too fussy with painting in the sky. And you don't have to be too fussy putting in some of the flat areas, you know, the grass and the ground here. So whatnot. Now, I do have green. I had a tube of green that I thought I set aside here. However, if I can't find that tube, I think this is the one here. Yeah, that's green. Okay. I sometimes mix the green, you know, put yellow with blue, and mix different shades of green. And when I say different shades, I really mean that the grass doesn't have to be just one shade, just like the sky doesn't have to be one solid shade of blue either. Okay, now, let's use this same brush I had. Where is it? Over here, yes, sir. Now, we're going to take some of this green, and if you want, that's up to you. You can wet. This brush already has a little green on it here. You can take and just wet that area in too. All of this is going to be greenish color. So you can kind of fill that in with some water. Come around the bend here. Now over on this side it's going to be green also, some green in there. So, whatever. I start with a lighter shade, paint right to the edge. I put tape around the edge so that I can make a sort of a false matte, you know, for the picture. So that's why you want to paint up to that, so when you pull the tape off, you still see. Now I had this little, I spilled some green right in here earlier. I don't know why, but I let little things bother me. If I start a picture, I want everything, the paper to be, you know, white, no spots or specks on it, and start off with a clean piece of paper. But a lot of times, you know, you can erase it, cover it up. If you got a spot there, you just cover it up, you know. So you paint around here. I do most of my picture as far as the subject goes. Or detail, I should say. I kind of paint that in rather than to spend too much time drawing. I usually don't spend an awful lot of time drawing, but I do have to get things, the placement on my composition set up the way I want it to work. Somebody used to call it the big areas or the larger shapes, you know. Get those big shapes in there first. And you can do that. Go right to the edge. All right. Now when you do this, make sure you press the edge down so that when you pull the tape off, you don't have paint that's able to get underneath there. You want to keep that clean if you can. Now these are going to be some fir trees up in here. I drew them very callously. But that they could be a little darker shade later on when we get up in there. But I do most, like I said, I do most of my drawing with my paintbrush when I paint it in. It just adds a little bit more to it. And I'm not really a person that gets too fussy, you know, with a lot of detail. I sometimes put things in just suggested, you know, abbreviated, less than all the fussy stuff. So that's how I usually work. You might call it painting very loosely. If you stick with a larger brush for most of the time, you're not going to get too picky with the fussy stuff. Okay, I can put some points on them. I got to let that sky dry a little bit more. But you see, I'm building up a little bit of contrast already. Letting the wash settle in, and then going over the wash where you want it to be darker. Usually, you can always work out of corners darker, and they say not to make every corner look the same. But see, this is a darker blue, a lighter area. This can be a little bit more noticeable, can be bushy. And this side can be shorter grass, you know, whatever, along the edge of the road. Okay. Could be a driveway too, I suppose. Although I wouldn't want to shovel this driveway. It's kind of a long thing to kind of work on. Okay, what else we got here? Okay, you can put some detail in there. I always like a little diversity here. Why not take some yellow, and maybe the field can have a little bit of yellow into the green, just to make it interesting. Okay, you can mix on the surface, blend it in. That's the beauty of watercolor. You can do a lot with it. Because it's wet on the surface, it stays a little bit drier, doesn't soak in as much. You don't want to get too carried away with it. You don't want the field to look too dried out. And another color that you could put in there that's kind of interesting, sometimes you could put a little bit of that darker color. I use sepia brown, very deep brown. And then I use a lighter shade sometimes with my color. Okay, so you can do what you like to do with it. How much you want to put in? Like you could put animals in the field, or a tractor or something out there, whatever. More fencing maybe. I stick with a large brush as long as I can. Then we could get fussier with a smaller brush after you let things set up more. Now, what I find sometimes is that when I'm painting, especially on a damp day, things don't dry as fast. When you're painting outside, you got the breeze, you got the air, and you've got the sunlight that's keeping your painting in a state of drying faster. The water dries up a little faster. But I want to cover up in here. I don't want to make that look like snow there either. It's springtime, so we don't need any more snow. Hopefully not. Yeah. Although some people love snow. I got relatives, I guess I've mentioned it before, they live on almost the border of Canada. They live in Vermont, but it's down the road is not too far from Canada. I don't want to leave that white in there, so let's just fill that in. Get carried away sometimes. It's all right to leave some white in there, or you could put a little pool or a pond or something running in there. Well, how much detail you want to add to your picture. Okay, yeah. So, see, just by doing this, the sky, some ground, you're getting some color into those big areas, and letting that set up. Now, the road or street or whatever it can be, it's sort of be an off color. You can make it like a dirt road if you want. Just use some of that, or you can make it a paved road. I think I got too much green still on the brush, so let's take some of the. We don't want that particular color there, so. Here we go. Take that out of there a little bit. And I'm going to mix some, take some of my Payne's Gray. I hope I can find it. I think this is it. And we're going to put some of that in there, see what happens. Now, if you get some paint in an area that you don't want, you can blot it. You can put white out. I always bring a tube of white with me if I want to cover something up. So I think I can use some of this Payne's Gray, and that's dark enough to hide some of that. We'll go right on top of that. And if it still shows too much green, we'll just give it another coat. We'll lay some more of that in there. Okay, right up along here. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to worry about staying too close to inside the lines here. Okay. Erase that. And just take some of this out. Now I've got enough, I think I've got enough gray in there. We'll just break this up on the edge. It can be asphalt, whatever, the road. And we got enough to sweep around here, take it around the corner, just pull some out of here. And I think I can squeeze it in to go up around the corner. use the edge of your brush. There you go. And swings around in through here. Something like you go right off the page, right off the paper. Okay, you get that in there. Yeah. Now I'm going to kind of lift some of that out of there, give it a little bit more highlight. Take some of that paint out of there. Now, remember I put some green in there? Well, what we've done, we've kind of hidden it there by painting on top of it. You could do that. You can do that easy, you know? Now, how much you want to do more with the road, I don't know if you want to put the center line or whatever you want to add to it, you know. Okay. Country roads, usually that type of road probably doesn't need a lot of attention. Now, let's see what else I can do. I'm going to clean that brush a little bit more. Get some of that gray out of there. Now, I might go back, and if I may have used a little bit too much of the yellow, so you can always kind of dab over that and do something with that. Show a little bit of shading and shadow on that particular area. You're going to get some shadow underneath the trees here too. That's when I can use a little bit more Payne's gray in there. But you can take some of that yellow out if you want. Make it more interesting. I like some yellow in there though, because it does perk it up a little, warms up your picture a little bit more. So I add a little bit on this side. Give me taller grass in there. Yeah, take a look at it. Get too busy here, let's pull some of that out. Smooth it out. Notice I'm still using my big brush. Using the big brush for a lot of this. This is too a little bit light in there, so let's make this side over here look a little bit like what's in here. The thing is, you can always go darker, but sometimes if you go too dark to begin with, then it's hard sometimes to erase it. So sometimes the best thing to do is just use white and just paint some white on top of it. Like using whiteout, you know, when you make a typing mistake or something like that. Okay, I don't know if I need some darker green there or not. Just put a little dab. Kind of fix that up in here. Okay. And, you know, you're following the kind of the contour of the hill there. Okay. Now, let's see. I don't know if I want to cut into that a little bit more. And do a little bit more in the foreground. Give that a little bit more detail and attention. Maybe in here. A little more texture. Now you notice that I'm always jumping around. I really don't finish any one particular area. I'm always jumping around. Okay, now we're going to let some of this kind of dry a bit. Work up. If I've got too much white showing, I just erase it and just cover it up with some paint. You can let some white come through, but you don't want to make it look like it's like a snow cover. Especially when you're trying to do springtime. Okay, something like that. Now, as far as the house goes, I suppose you could kind of just take a little bit of Payne's Gray, and you probably could kind of darken in a little. Oops, I get a little bit. I still got some green in my brush. I'm going to let that one rest a little bit and use a smaller flat. Whoa, there you go. All right. Now, I got some green in the roof, so I don't need green roof. So I'm going to just wet that, and again, blot that out. Pretty much I picked up most of that green. Now, let's go back in here and take some of that Payne's Gray. Hopefully get some of that on the brush. Now, you don't have to do a lot of fussy stuff on the roof. Just kind of bring it down and, you know, whatever. Just get some paint in there. That's the big thing. Now, if you want it to be a particular color, we haven't used any the real warmer colors, so you may want to make the house, put some yellow in there, see what that looks like. Just kind of fill it in a little bit. If it's a little bit too bright, I just wet the brush, put some more water in there, and just soften that out. Yeah. It sure shows up, doesn't it, with yellow, huh? It really. Not only do things go towards the focal point, but also the color of the building itself really is quite noticeable. And you get some paint in there and wiggle it around. Now, if you want to show some shadow on the building itself too, you take again. Go back into your Payne's Gray, take a little speck of that, and just sort of make it, put some, oops, a little bit too much. Just put some shadow under the eave of the roof a bit, and on this side, put it in sort of the shadows. But it does show up a lot more if you make the color a little bit different than what we have. Now, here's another thing too. I use yellow, but I do have a little bit of orange here. Now, I sometimes experiment a little bit and just take a little bit of color and just add some of that into the color that we have, the yellow, and just make it look like it's a little shading around the building and whatnot. Maybe in the window area or something like that. And look at it and see if that helps. Now, if that doesn't help, you can always lift it out. But sometimes it sort of tones things down a little bit, adds a little bit more variation into the color. Okay. A lot of times you see bonds, if it's a bond, you can use red. For some reason, everybody likes red bonds. So sometimes you see a lot of red bonds. You notice I repeat the color. Now, even in the picture itself, you could take some of this color, and I usually put a little dabs of it, suggesting up into this area where our trees are. And you're supposed to supposedly use the same color somewhere else within the realm of your picture area 2 or 3 times. You can make maybe some little flowers or something, maybe suggest some things out in the field, you know, dabble, repeat that color, well, a little bit more of that, not, you can add a little bit more of that. I kind of hid the mailbox. I painted it green, surrounded by green, the color. Camouflage your mailbox, huh? Okay, a little bit there, maybe a little bit in here, along the side of the road. Yeah, let's warm it up a little bit. Okay, yeah, just a little bit in there. Okay. Now you could do different, like I said, you could do different things with this, whatever you want it to be. I probably should spend a little bit more time on making these look more like trees. And sometimes what you want to do, take one of your finer brushes. This is like a liner brush or a rigger. And that little brush, you can kind of do some of the more fussier work. You know, some more detail. Maybe show the tree coming out, some branches. Just make it look more like tree shapes. Hide some of that orange maybe, or blend it in. You know, do a little bit more detail. And you can use the same brush, and you can do a little bit more detail. You can make this fence a little bit more noticeable, you know, that type of thing. Put some more markings in there along the rail, define that a little bit more in here. Now that's quite a bit of a patch of yellow. So if you want to break that up a little bit more, I would go back in and take some of my, where are we? Take some of my green again. And you can kind of dabble around in there, make maybe some stems of things. This is where I talk about doing a lot of drawing with my paintbrush. Just putting a little bit more in there as far as detail goes, or texture. Should call it some texture. Yeah, you can put some texture back in. Same way on this side. You can have show more of the grass kind of on the edge. You take some of the white away there and just fill that in more. Something a little bit more along the edge of the road here. Just hide some of that white. You know, and shadows, you know, like if you have shadows falling, sometimes the shadows could be across the meadow. You've got shading. You can put a little shading back here for the building itself, you know, on the ground. See, and the trees back here, they could have some more shadow in here. I'm just using some of my Payne's Gray in the green. But if you want to show some shadows across here, you can kind of break up the ground a little with a color. Whatever works. You want to put a little bit more texture in the road? You could possibly do that. I don't know if it would make much difference, but you could add a little texture in the road. Be careful you don't have too much green on your brush. Here I go again, huh? With the greens. Yeah, you could add some more texture in the road. Something like that. And it's supposed to go up around the corner. Sometimes I just take a little bit of color and just put some trees, some texture in front of the building so it doesn't look too flat. Straight edge. Hide some of that. Fill it in a little bit more in here. Type of thing, yeah. So a lot of times what happens when you're painting, you find that you should add a little bit extra color, a little bit more than you normally, you know, would put in, whatnot. I I was a little bit too scribbly, I think, on the trees here. I should give them a little bit more attention. They're supposed to be fir trees. So, you clean that up a little bit more in the background. Sometimes trees that are further away, I just leave a smudge of color. They're so far away, you can't see too much of the texture. You just kind of have them kind of fade away more. Just clean up the tips on the trees. And they could go way down and back here somewhere. Fill in that background. Add a little bit more fill in that white. Right in there. There you go. Sometimes you make the colors a little bit darker. It contrasts with the building there. Normally, I would spend a little bit more time with the buildings. You can add something onto it. You can have a tree coming up into there somewhere. You can put that in. Sometimes I just wait until it's all dry, then I go back in and I can outline things a little bit better. You take the sky, for example. If those clouds don't conform too much, you can always add a little bit more texture, maybe with a finer brush or a finer pen, and just add a little bit more texture into that, soften it up a bit. I can go off in the distance. And even in here, along the edge of the road, you can define it a little bit more. You want to put the mailbox back in. Take a little dab of white. And I mean just a dab. Just a little bit of a dab. And what we can do here, and get this thing to work, you just need a speck of that. And take a little brush, maybe one of your round brushes. I had a mailbox in here somewhere. And all we have to do is do this. Zing. We put the mailbox back, or sign. If it's too big, we can always work around it and blot it. But you can put things back into your picture. I would let that dry and outline it more with like a mailbox shape. And there's some other little things you can put in here. If you want to, we haven't used red at all. If you want a spot of red, we can put a little bit of that in there. If we, here's a little bit of red. All we need is just a speck or two here and there. Okay, just a speck. Now, let's take the little brush, make sure it's clean. Cleaner. Okay, this is up to you. I don't know if you want to put something red in here or not. If it's too distracting. Now, if we do put that in, then we have to put something repeated over here, something out there somewhere. 1, 2, maybe something up and through here that might be red. And if you don't want that to show up as much, I just take back here and I just pat it out, just soften it out, just suggest a little bit of color there into that area. And same way over here. You could put a tree in there too, if you want. You have something closer. And what else? What else? I should have been a little bit more fussy with some of the texture on the fir trees back here. You can hide a lot of that, so you take a lot of that out with a darker color. You always want to, at the base of everything, you always want to put a little bit of darker color around, because everything's being sort of shaded in because it's being blocked out by the leaves or the needles on the trees. So all of that can be a little bit darker through here. When you're working. Now, how much fussy you want to get with this, that's up to you. Okay. Just quiet down some of that red color. But like I said, if you're going to use a color, don't just put it in one place, but, drop it around here or there. Now, what happens when you look at this tomorrow, after it has all night to dry, you might see where you need to do a little touch up here and there with your particular artwork. There's always room for touch-up and whatnot. So, anyhow. But the idea is the focal point is to take your focal point and have everything kind of point towards the barn. Now, if that's a little bit too bright, what we do is just quiet that down. Just put a little bit of something in there just to quiet that down. Sometimes you have the roof too fade off in the background. Not a busy street. Sometimes the dirt road, there's usually something that grows up in between the tire tracks. But if it's an asphalt road or cement road, they used to experiment with what type of material to use on roads. And where my grandparents used to live, they tried cement roads. Well, that wasn't as good a material, because cement does over a period of time crack and break up a bit. And the surface is a little bit, it doesn't have enough bite to it. So when it would ice over, it would be extra slippery, where you get more of a texture with, asphalt material. A little bit more of a tooth or texture to the road. All right, there you go. Now, this is a little bit too much green in there right now, but when this dries out, we can determine whether we want to put more of a color into it. You could have a field of daisies or whatever flowers, and you can put a lot of texture back in there if you want. Right on the edge of the road, that might need a little bit of, just break that up more, and you can do it with a marker. If you have a fine tip marker, you can kind of put some more texture back in the edge of the road. You make sure it's dry though. And it looks a little bit too light there. Gonna take some of that out. This little guy, that should do it. Right in here, right in there. Let's quiet that down a little bit more. We could kind of fill this in. Something like that. I think I should put more water on my brush or something. A little touch-up work there. That looks a bit, well, that's the mailbox. We could kind of outline that a little bit more later on. It doesn't have to be that bright. Quiet it down with a little soft gray over it. and whatnot. But yeah. Now, the thing is that a lot of times I put these strands of tape, the width of the tape around on the inside, and it acts like a false white mat. Hope my fingers are dry enough. You know, leave my fingerprints on the white part. And come around the corner here. I'm trying to work out a way of pulling the tape off easier. I think I'm almost getting to the point where I can do it a lot easier now than I used to. You don't want to tear it too straight, just on an angle, so you don't damage the surface of your paper. Oops. Broke that one off. Let's try this side. We have a little better luck here. All right, sort of on an angle, but don't just tear it off straight. See it? Just an angle coming down. All right. So here we are. Now, kind of a quickie. I got to touch up that little white in there. That's going to be the mailbox, and or whatever. I don't know why you'd put a mailbox that far down away from the house, but nevertheless. It gives you an idea where we're at here. Okay, but the emphasis today is focal point. Have things go, your eye moves towards the focal point, or the center of interest. And in this case, it happens to be the house or the building. But it could be anything. Your focal points can go anywhere in here somewhere, but only one particular area that you want to take the person into the painting. That's what you want to try to do. Now, if I remember next week, I'll do a lighthouse where your attention is going towards the obviously the lighthouse. So that's pretty much it for this day, and thanks for being with us. I was going to say, if you have any questions sometimes about certain things, you can send in, and I can answer some of your questions. I've started classes over at the Senior Center. I'm pretty well booked everybody in. We had a little bit of an overflow, so we were able to fit them in. And but over at the Senior Center, occasionally I'll run some sessions, usually in the springtime and fall and so forth. And the weather's a little bit better, hopefully. But that's it for today. And thanks a lot for being with us. And like I said, I always end up, when I finish up a little bit, I said, brushes up, and we'll see you next time.